Hello everyone, welcome to the Tim Booker channel. I wish you all an enjoyable listening experience. Today, the book I'm interpreting for you is Escape from Freedom. The title itself is quite intriguing. Escape from freedom. That doesn't seem right, does it? Generally, we talk about pursuing freedom. Freedom is good, it's a cherished concept and something everyone desires. So, why does the author suggest escaping from freedom? Before answering this question, let me briefly introduce the author of this book, Erich Fromm, and the background of its writing. Fromm was born in Germany in 1900, with American and German-Turkish heritage. After obtaining his doctoral degree from Heidelberg University in Germany, he dedicated himself to the study of psychoanalysis. He became a renowned psychoanalyst and humanistic philosopher of the 20th century. In 1934, after the rise of the Nazi regime in Germany, at the age of 34, Fromm fled to the United States and began working at Columbia University. Escape from Freedom was written during his time at Columbia and was his first published work. Fromm's main psychological viewpoint is that human behavior isn't solely determined by instincts. On the contrary, impulses, passions, and actions are influenced by the era a person lives in and their relationship with the surrounding social environment. In other words, within a specific historical context, people of the same era might exhibit similar psychological states, which might not be as apparent in other eras. For example, in our modern times, there's a prominent psychological characteristic, anxiety. People from various walks of life, whether rich or poor, single or married, often describe themselves as anxious. However, in the generations before us, this emotion might not have been as noticeable. Given that human psychological states change with the times, Fromm was perplexed by a phenomenon of his era, the rise of the Nazi regime. He questioned the mindset of the German people. Why did so many ordinary Germans support the Hitler government? This curiosity drove him to write Escape from Freedom. He attempted to analyze how societal background influences one's psychological state and why people tend to evade freedom and submit to authority. I've distilled the contents of this book into 3 key questions for discussion. 1. What is freedom, and why do people seek to escape it? 2. How do individuals evade freedom? 3. According to Fromm, how can we truly attain genuine freedom? Alright, next let's take a look at the first question, what is freedom? Simply put, freedom is when individuals possess self-awareness and an independent personality, allowing them to autonomously choose their way of life and creatively realize their values. However, for a significant period of time after birth, individuals lack this freedom. For instance, in terms of eating, dressing, using things, and moving around, we depend on our parents. Even the choice of our own name isn't within our control. Fromm refers to the connection between individuals and the external environment, such as parents and family, as primary ties. These are the inherent social connections that people have. Fromm believes that these primary ties imply a lack of individuality on one hand, meaning that although you have an independent personality, you can't autonomously choose your life. On the other hand, these ties provide a sense of security. When a child stays close to their parents, even though they are vulnerable, their parents protect and care for them, meeting their basic survival needs. However, as you grow older, you start realizing that you and your parents are separate individuals. You have your own ideals and needs, which may not align with the goals your parents have for you. This separation from your original family marks the beginning of your own decision-making about the life you want. The desire for freedom and independence becomes stronger over time. Fromm refers to this process as individuation, a journey of breaking away from the primitive ties, progressing toward freedom. Yet, the consequences of freedom are complex. The first consequence is breaking free from these primary ties, which leads to the growth of our self-power. We begin building a complete, independent personality. Consequently, this process of individuation brings about the second consequence, an increasingly deep sense of loneliness and anxiety. As you grow up and separate from your primary ties, you realize you're on your own. There's no one to protect you, and you have to face the outside world alone. Then you realize how vast the world is, full of challenges. You might feel inadequate, unable to solve various problems, which results in a powerful sense of helplessness and anxiety. Here, Fromm draws on a biblical myth about humanity's expulsion from Eden to reflect the fundamental relationship between humans and freedom. In a nutshell, Adam and Eve were living peacefully in Eden, where God provided unlimited food and water. But they disobeyed God's command by eating from the tree of knowledge, gaining the ability to discern good from evil. As a result, God was angered, and humanity's ancestors were expelled from Eden, embarking on their journey of self-sustenance. While religiously, this myth highlights the idea of humanity's suffering due to sinful actions, sees it from a human perspective. Defying God's command signifies liberation from a state of compulsion, and stealing the forbidden fruit becomes a pursuit of freedom. Of course, Eden is just one interpretation from Christianity. From a secular viewpoint, humanity's transition from ignorance to civilization is also a process of liberation, gaining freedom. In the early stages of human society, breaking free from primary ties and developing self-awareness was challenging. People were bound by blood relationships, clans, religions, and more. During this time, it was impossible to exist outside these primitive groups or to pursue personal ideals. While these groups had their downsides, they also provided security. Following group norms and the paths designated by others ensured a relatively smooth life. However, history has progressed into the 21st century. The entire history of the West after the Middle Ages can be seen as an ongoing process of individuation. In a way, individuals have broken free from the past necessity of depending on blood relations, religion, nationality, or state for their way of life. Self-awareness has grown stronger, and individuals need to make their own life choices and take responsibility for their actions. These choices and responsibilities also bring significant pressure. Due to the economic and political conditions that human society relies upon, which cannot provide a concrete foundation for human freedom, the original ties have been severed. Consequently, individuals experience a tremendous sense of helplessness. For instance, traditional moral values in society used to dictate that parents were cared for by their children when they grew older. However, in today's society, where children often move away to work and can't tend to their elderly parents, these traditional values have broken down and can't easily be restored. The economic and social conditions of today can't resolve the challenges of taking care of the elderly, leading to intensified feelings of loneliness and anxiety. Similarly, in contemporary romantic relationships, individuals often find it difficult to make choices and experience great distress. In the past, there were fewer complications in this regard. Individuals simply followed their parents' wishes without needing to make decisions themselves. However, the current capitalist economy has introduced greater complexities. Success and material gains have become the goals of life, and personal accomplishments are measured by economic achievements. This intensifies feelings of insignificance and vulnerability. Fromm asserts that the avoidance of freedom is not merely a matter of individual growth but also a characteristic of the mass mentality within modern capitalist societies. When discussing modern capitalism, he refers to the context of the 20th century, particularly the 1930s and 1940s. Within this framework, why would people opt to escape freedom and instead submit to a supreme authority? The analysis considers the impact of capitalism on individuals' mental, social, and political lives. Capitalism indeed has a liberating effect in terms of individuals' economic, social, and mental development. For instance, economically, personal success can be achieved through individual effort and action, contributing to economic and political freedoms. However, capitalism also increases a sense of isolation and loneliness. Fromm identifies three main factors contributing to this isolation. First, capitalism's economy compels self-reliance. Success and failure depend entirely on one's own actions, leading to feelings of helplessness against powerful competitors. Second, economic success is often viewed as the ultimate goal. This shift from earlier times, when economic activity was seen as fulfilling and enriching, emphasizes material success over other values. Third, interpersonal relationships within capitalism can be indifferent, especially within employer-employee dynamics. This instrumental approach to relationships exacerbates feelings of insignificance. Fromm proposes four methods to overcome the inherent insecurity caused by these negative aspects of capitalism. 1. Accumulating wealth to increase one's sense of security. 2. Gaining power and prestige to enhance one's perceived value. 3. Seeking value and confidence within the family unit. 4. Finding pride and identity within a larger community or nation. However, Fromm argues that these external sources of freedom only provide temporary relief and do not address the fundamental loneliness and anxiety caused by the human condition. Moreover, as inflation and economic crises increase feelings of insecurity, the potential for personal success diminishes. The rise of powerful corporations and dehumanizing labor conditions further erode self-worth, leaving individuals feeling replaceable. The threat of war also amplifies the sense of insecurity. Writers like Kafka depicted this state of mind in their works, illustrating the struggle of individuals to connect in a world of isolation and uncertainty. Fromm maintains that the desire to escape freedom emerges from this pervasive sense of helplessness and isolation, rooted in the human experience. Next, let's delve into how individuals evade freedom. In general, people, in order to overcome loneliness and helplessness, entertain the idea of surrendering their individuality and diminishing themselves completely within the external world. Through the lens of psychoanalysis, Erich Fromm presents 3 ways in which individuals escape freedom. The first method involves binding oneself and others into an authoritative system, effectively becoming a member of that system. There are 2 primary ways to achieve this, according to Fromm. One is submitting to authority, which he terms masochism. The other is becoming an authority figure oneself, controlling others, or sadism. Whether masochistic or sadistic, both paths entail the stripping away of independent selfhood. For those who submit, the loss of personal autonomy is understandable. However, for those who grasp power and seek to control others, the inclination to lose oneself can be attributed to a lack of internal security. Unable to affirm their self-worth independently, they resort to controlling others for validation, effectively negating their independent identity. Fromm contends that both roles, submission and dominance, manifest as attempts to annihilate one's independent personality, thus exemplifying a form of evading freedom. In other words, an avenue for evading freedom involves tethering one's life and psyche to others. At the start, we mentioned one of Fromm's motivations for writing Escape from Freedom was to examine why Germans chose to support the totalitarian regime of Nazi Germany. Fromm believed that the German choice of Nazism was a manifestation of evading freedom within the context of the capitalist era. In the psychological foundation of successful Nazism, Fromm distinguishes 2 distinct groups. One consists of those who didn't genuinely align with Nazi ideology but capitulated to Nazi rule, mainly composed of working-class and liberal middle-class individuals. Their willing surrender stemmed from feelings of exhaustion and disappointment. After World War I, they had hoped for socio-economic improvement, only to face economic setbacks and crises. Disillusioned, they felt powerless and eventually acquiesced to the Nazi government. Furthermore, the Nazi regime became synonymous with Germany itself. Opposing it was akin to opposing the nation. On the other hand, there were fervent supporters of Nazism among the lower middle class, including small business owners and clerical workers. For them, the Nazi ideology's call for blind devotion to a leader, hatred towards opposition, and compliance with a national identity resonated strongly. Fromm attributes their enthusiastic adherence to a psychological yearning for power and obedience, driven by both economic and psychological deprivation. The economic hardships of the post-World War I era, coupled with the undermining of traditional authorities and values, led this group to seek solace in the Nazi regime. The lower middle class, once economically and culturally marginalized, now found a route to regain prosperity and prestige by aligning with Nazi authorities. Many perceived superiority over others, satisfying their emotional needs. Fromm asserts that Hitler and the Nazi regime expertly tapped into the human psyche of the German population, capitalizing on the innate desire to surrender to an omnipotent authority in exchange for psychological security. This alignment of individual needs and authoritarian control resulted in a convergence of interests. These dynamics are not confined to historical contexts, examples can be found in everyday life. Consider a scenario where a wife endures domestic abuse despite the clear harm inflicted by her husband. Fear of leaving and uncertainty about life beyond the abusive relationship keep her tethered. Meanwhile, the husband, with abusive tendencies, fears losing control if she were to leave. This dynamic illustrates Fromm's explanation of how certain individuals, driven by submissive or domineering tendencies, choose to evade freedom by subsuming themselves within relationships that are destructive or controlling. The second way of evading freedom is through destructiveness. Destructiveness refers to individuals who are dissatisfied with their own circumstances and choose to oppose the world by attempting to destroy it. Their rationale is that if they obliterate the world, they will be immune to harm. This psychological mechanism can explain phenomena such as abuse, terrorism, and even genocide. If an individual's desire for destructiveness is suppressed by their environment, say, if they lack the capability to dismantle their surroundings, this desire may turn inward, resulting in self-destructive behaviors. This manifests as self-inflicted harm or self-mutilation, driven by the belief that if they cease to exist, others can no longer cause them pain. The third method of evading freedom is mechanical conformity, which involves mechanically conforming to a single behavioral pattern. From observed that in their era, within fascist nations, evading freedom primarily manifested as citizens submitting to an all-powerful leader. In democracies like the United States, it took the form of compulsive conformity and going with the flow. When faced with countless choices and the responsibility of shaping their own lives, people can feel overwhelmed and fearful. In response, they may choose to conform, aligning themselves with the majority to avoid decision-making. This way, they avoid standing out and being ridiculed. This psychological state is commonplace in modern life. For instance, social media influencers often seem cut from the same mold, and societal pressures dictate when one should get married or take other life steps, regardless of personal feelings. From posits that attempting to measure oneself against societal norms strips away one's individuality. He outlines the 3 ways people evade freedom. 1. Binding oneself to others. 2. Pursuing destructiveness. 3. Mechanical conformity to a uniform behavior. Upon hearing these perspectives, you might feel a sense of despair. So, how can you truly achieve freedom? Today, in the final section we're covering, we will address the question, is the cycle of moving from bondage to freedom and then seeking to be bound again an inevitable one? Does independence and freedom inherently lead to loneliness and anxiety? Certainly not, according to Fromm. Fromm believes that expanding one's freedom does not necessarily lead to a vicious cycle. It's possible for individuals to be free without being isolated. This kind of freedom doesn't rely on others for its attainment but on one's ability to self-actualize. But what is self-actualization? How can we achieve it? According to Fromm, self-actualization involves engaging in spontaneous actions that bring personal satisfaction without dependence on others. This concept raises the question of what spontaneous activity is. While there's much literature on this topic, in simple terms, it contrasts with compulsory actions. Compulsory actions are forced upon an individual by external factors, whereas spontaneous activities are voluntary and self-initiated. Spontaneity isn't akin to robotic behavior. It's distinct from blindly following external commands like a machine. Spontaneous activity involves critically assessing external directives. In contrast, robots obediently follow orders without questioning their validity or considering personal preferences. Spontaneity is rarely seen in our daily lives due to external pressures. For instance, you might dislike your supervisor but still praise them or leave a job you enjoy to care for your family. Nonetheless, moments of spontaneity exist even for most of us. Consider when you struggled with a math problem, and suddenly a solution appeared. The joy derived from this isn't based on external praise but from overcoming a challenge using your inherent capabilities. Fromm argues that the core of spontaneous activities is love. This doesn't entail sacrificing your identity to become a clone of someone else or to possess something you love. Instead, it involves maintaining your individuality while loving others. It's about creating a relationship where you're complete as an individual yet able to share a profound connection. Another core of self-actualization is labor. This type of labor isn't the mundane job done merely to earn a living. Rather, it's a creative activity through which one expresses genuine feelings and thoughts. It's about producing something that's uniquely yours, finding value in the process rather than just the end result. Our culture often emphasizes results over the process, valuing the product more than the act of creation. We often measure success by the material and immaterial possessions we acquire, attaching our self-worth to these outcomes. This mindset breeds anxiety. Happiness becomes dependent on what we gain or lose. Fromm suggests that if individuals can achieve self-actualization through spontaneous love and labor, realizing that the meaning of life lies in the act of living itself, they won't seek external security. Instead, they'll rely on self-actualization to become stronger and more self-assured. In conclusion, escape from freedom teaches us that freedom involves having self-awareness, an independent personality, and the capacity to choose our own path. Whether it's personal growth or societal progress, it's a journey of breaking free from constraints towards freedom. Within this process, people gain power but also experience increased feelings of powerlessness, loneliness, and anxiety. To avoid these negative emotions, they may choose paths of negative freedom, such as following an ultimate leader, engaging in destructiveness, or conforming to societal norms. However, from beliefs these paths can't truly resolve feelings of loneliness and helplessness. The real solution lies in self-actualization through spontaneous love and labor, relying on oneself rather than others for inner security. That concludes our discussion of Escape from Freedom. Congratulations on completing another book. Thank you all for listening. Tim Booker Channel encourages you to subscribe, like, share this valuable knowledge with friends, and combine wisdom with practice to achieve your financial goals and create a better future. Thank you, and goodbye.